Hey guys, we are walking into Unit 6, Circular Motion and Gravitation, and so today's lesson is about uniform circular motion. And specifically, uniform circular motion is the motion of an object in a circle with constant speed. And so there's a couple of different things that means, but basically what that means is if I were to look at it at the speedometer of an object that is being twirled around in a circle, then I would know that it's moving at the same speed, right? So we have this idea of a linear distance to travel. So think about like a hula hoop or your car tire or something like that, that when it goes one complete revolution around, you travel a certain distance forward, right? So that distance that you're traveling is equal to the circumference and we know the circumference is 2 pi r, the distance around the circle, right? So if you're traveling, you're trying to figure out something's velocity, we say velocity is the distance divided by the time it takes. When we're traveling around the circle, right, we know that we want to know how long it takes to go all the way around completely one time, right? So we have a couple of different things. First, the distance is going to be 2 pi r. That's the circumference around that. The time here, and we're going to use big T, where in this case, big T is what we call the period of rotation. And what that is it's the time for once around, basically. So one time around, okay? So that's the formula we're using for the velocity here. Now the velocity vector, that's kind of interesting. So what I want you to do is we're going to get 4 dots. Erase this real quick. But I want you to create 4 dots on this circle here. The first one is going to be at the top, basically all at 90 degrees from each other. And what happens is here is we have this velocity vector. It's going to be pointing here. And let's pretend that we're rotating or going around the circle in this direction here. We have that velocity vector pointing that way, this one pointing this way, and that one pointing up. So if you notice, all of these velocity vectors, they're all pointing in different directions, right? Initially, it's pointing to the left, then it's pointing down, then to the right, and then to the up. What's happening is the velocity vector is changing, right? So anytime we had a change in velocity with respect to time, we called that acceleration, right? So in a circle, when something's moving in a circle, we call that in centripetal acceleration. And so what happens is when we have a centripetal acceleration, we call that center seeking. Right, so kind of from its Latin terms. And so what we're going to draw these acceleration vectors, a sub c, all around the circle. All pointing towards the center. That bottom was not really pointing to a center, but all towards that center point, right? We call this the axis of rotation here. And everything is going around that thing there, okay? So we have this idea of a velocity vector. We're calling that the tangential speed, right? And obviously it's tangent to the circle here. That's why we're calling it tangential velocity. And it's center seeking. So we have this centripetal acceleration that is pointing towards the middle, causing that velocity vector to continually round the edge. So for example, if I were to draw one here, and you guys can kind of see how the rest of this goes, we have the velocity vector pointing that way, with our centripetal acceleration vector pointing towards the middle. And if you keep drawing that, you will see how all of those vectors keep going around the circle. So the formula for that, now to get into some of the mathy stuff, the formula for centripetal acceleration is down here. Centripetal acceleration is the velocity vector, vt squared over r. You'll see tangential speed, tangential velocity. A lot of times, you'll just see it written v squared over r. Okay, so, but these end up meaning the same things. So let's do a couple of the questions here and see how they do. So here's our first example. We have a tire, like basically a rope swing, acting kind of like a pendulum. So we have the centripetal acceleration. So we're given a lot of these things to begin with. So centripetal acceleration is 3 meters per second squared. We have the length of the rope. Well, that's going to end up being our radius in this case, 2.1 meters. And we want to know what the girl's tangential speed is, or the velocity, right? So we're kind of looking at it like this. So if we kind of think of how a swing works, so the object would be moving with that velocity with the centripetal acceleration pointing up, right? So that's kind of what we're looking for. So we use our formula here. A sub c is equal to v squared over r. Looking for the velocity, so we're going to solve for a velocity. Now we can plug stuff in. We have 3 times 2.1. Take the square root of it. So the velocity that the girl is traveling at is about 2.51 meters per second. All right, not too bad. Another question we could ask, part B, would be how long would it take if they're going in maybe a complete circle? How long does it take to go around once if she was able to do that, right? How long would that take? So we would use our velocity equals 2 pi r over big T. We're looking for the big T value. So big T is equal to 2 pi r over v. Plug stuff in, 2 pi, my radius again is 2.1. My velocity was 2.51, found that already. So big T is about 5.3 seconds for the person to go around. So not too bad. Here we have another pretty straightforward example. This one gives us everything we need. Centripetal acceleration is v squared over r. Looks like we're given the velocity at 7.85. Square that. The radius of 20. So the centripetal acceleration would be 3.08 meters per second squared, all directed towards the center. So that's something to kind of remember about, okay? So if we have an object that is accelerated, if we remember force is equal to mass times acceleration, right? So if we have a mass that is accelerated in a circular motion, that means we have F sub c equals mass times A sub c, right? So the only thing we're adding are these subscripts to what we otherwise know as force. So once again, we're looking at this thing here. Anytime you have a centripetal force, what we're looking for is the thing that's causing the object to keep moving in a circle. So for example, if we have a ball that's being twirled overhead in a string or something like that, we've all done that, right? What happens is that string is providing a tension force towards the middle, right? You're actually holding on to the string. So that force is directed towards the middle. Without that force, it would fly off, right? Same thing goes for how the Earth orbits the sun. We have those that gravity string, essentially, that's holding on to us, right? So in the case of a small plane that's going in a circular path, we want to know what the plane's mass is, given that there's a certain force required to keep it moving in a circle. So the first thing we want to do is we want to try to write down all of our givens, make sure we have everything we need. So here's our velocity, here's our radius, 188.5, and then here we're actually given the centripetal force. What is the plane's mass? And so we know the mass is hidden inside our centripetal force equation. It's right in here. But notice again, we have all of these different things that are given to us. That means we have to take apart the A sub c. So F sub c equals mv squared over r. And it looks like we have all of the information now. F sub c is 1.89 times 10 to the fourth. Looks like we're looking for the mass. The velocity is 56.6. And the radius is 188.5 meters. So we plug a few numbers in and we get mass is about that many kilograms. So make sure we understand how to get the algebra to figure out that guy right there, okay? The next question is pretty straightforward. There's nothing too hard about this. It just tells us to figure out what the force is given all of this information. So a straight plug and chug question. The only error that we might end up making on something like this is forgetting to square this. So make sure you remember to square everything here. It looks like the centripetal force is 39.96 newtons. A more interesting example is this guy down here. So we have friction keeping something on a platform, and that's pretty much how things work, right? We have friction that is involved with keeping an object on a spinning platform. So the first couple of questions is, we already kind of know how to do this, right? It wants to know the centripetal acceleration of the object. So A sub c equals v squared over r. Looks like I'm given both the velocity and the radius, so we can plug that in. So we get centripetal acceleration is about 8.03 meters per second squared. Okay. For the centripetal force, we're just going to end up getting our mass and multiplying it by the centripetal force. Or our mass is kind of small. I should have used a larger mass so the numbers don't get so tiny, but all we're doing is getting our mass in kilograms, multiplying it by our acceleration. So we get a centripetal force of 0.0803 newtons. So we just got that small number, multiplied it by 0.01, okay. The last question, that's kind of more interesting. Asks about the coefficient of friction between the object and the platform. So if I'm looking at the object head on, I first have to draw the free body diagram of what's going on here. So here's my object, right? I know that it has to have an FG, or its weight pointed downwards. It has to have a normal force pointing upwards. And if it's moving in a circle, there's some kind of net force that keeps it moving in a circle. Well, if it's moving in a circle, that net force must be the centripetal force acting on the object. Well, this kind of adds a particular case for us. In this case, it's the friction that is keeping the object from sliding away, right? If the object starts spinning too fast, that means there's not enough friction to keep him on there. If he's spinning slow enough, that means the object gets to stay on the platform, right? So if I remember how this works, I have my centripetal force is equal to my friction force. And I'm going to take apart my friction force to say F sub c equals mu times the normal force. So all I've done is I've transformed that because I already know what my centripetal force is over here. And my normal force in this case, well, Fg is equal to Fn, right? It's on my flat level surface. So my Fn is mg, so I kind of know everything already. So finishing this out, I get my centripetal force of 0.0803 according to my previous question divided by my mg, 9.8 times 0.01, and I get my mu, which turns out to be 0.819, right? So that's going to be how we end up working that. There's kind of another method we could use. What happens is my centripetal force is equal to my friction force. We already kind of established that. But my centripetal force could be written as A sub c times mass equals mu times the normal force. Well, if I take that apart to all of its components, I get mv squared over r times mv squared over r equals mu mg. Notice what happens with the masses. So oftentimes what's going to happen is the mass is sometimes either not needed or it's not given, and we got to go back and find it somehow. So anytime you don't have mass in these kinds of questions, it typically drops out. It typically goes away. So this equation can break down into something that looks like this. Depending on which way I'm looking, I can look for the velocity of the object, the radius of the object, mu, and I guess we'll stay on Earth for these, right? So 9.8 will always be g, so we're going to have these other ways we're going to be looking at those, but we'll for sure ask you these friction questions on your test and quiz and all that. So, all right, thanks for watching. Let me know if you have any questions. I'll catch you later. Bye.